All right, new day, new laptop to repair, and this time we got an Alienware X14. I don't see very many of these. This is the 14-inch Alienware gaming laptop. This one was sent in because it said it will not turn on. So I haven't looked at this yet. We'll look at it together and see if we can get this one figured out. All right, we'll press the power button and see if anything happens. I see a little light. Okay, the light's not on now. Let's press the power button again. Okay, now this light's on right here at this microphone. But we're not getting a picture on the screen. Let's plug in the power and go ahead and keep an eye on the meter. Okay, it is negotiating 20 volts. I'm pulling 0 volts. Let's open the lid. All right, so it did trigger on automatically whenever I opened the lid. So let's see, and we do have a little power light here. And when I press it, it does nothing. So let me see if I hold down the power button and see if it shuts off. So it's when I held down the power button, it jumped down to 3.75 amps, but it kept pulling 3.75 amps. Now, I don't know if that's charging the battery or not, but 75 watts consistently seems kind of high for charging a battery. All right, I'm hitting the power button again. So it's triggering, it's pulling almost, this is a 130 watt charger. This laptop actually uses a USB-C to power it. Usually they use a big barrel jack because they're going to be using 240 watts or 330 watt chargers. This one's only using 130 watts. But if you see, it's basically is maxing out this charger. Well, it hits 110, 115 watts. That only gives a 15 watt headroom on there. So, you know, this thing's really using everything it has. But I'm still not getting a picture on the screen. I'm not getting any type of response except for this one little light that's on the keyboard. So I'm not even sure what that light pertains to. So let's open up the bottom and see if we can take a look inside. The fans are spinning up. It's still on, and then it just shut off. So the fans just spun up and then shut off. So I'm not sure what that is. Okay. All right, and the bottom is off. All right, let's take a look around. Oh, the board is hot. Oh, and I can see the fan spinning right now, so it's still on. Let's go ahead and just unplug the battery, turn that off. Okay, so, all right, here's the main battery. One thing I noticed that's kind of interesting on this battery, it does have the Alienware logo on here. Usually it would say Dell, but this is an Alienware. But there's no serial number on here, so which is kind of strange because usually there's always going to be a sticker with a serial number on it, which is it tells you that's a genuine part, which is super important because that's something that we only sell. Is going to be Dell and Alienware genuine parts that are OEM. They all have serial numbers on them, so I always like to take a look and make sure that people are using genuine parts. So here's the fans. See how they have serial numbers on them. There's the wireless card. This has a full 2280 NVMe hard drive. But we need to figure out what's going on and why this machine's not posting. I'm going to unplug this main battery and see if we can do a CMOS reset on it. There could be a chance that the BIOS on this is frozen and we just need to clear it out. So I have the main battery unplugged. We're going to plug in the power. We do have it negotiating 20 volts. I'm going to open the lid and see if it responds. And it is responding to lid movement, which means that it's detecting that the lid's open or closed. So that most likely means that the EC chip is fine. And it is trying to power up. We're only pulling 40 watts now, 1 or 2 amps, and prior to this we were pulling more like 5 or 6 amps, or 5.5 amps, and so I think that's because I was probably charging the battery at the exact same time. And so at this point it's only pulling 1.8, and then let's see if it's doing a true CMOS reset. It should be turning on, pulling some current, and then it should shut back off and go back down to 0 and then turn back on, and it will do that through a few different cycles. So let's go ahead and see if it does that. It does look like it's going through a CMOS reset at this point. So let's just let it sit here for a few more minutes. It could take up to 5 times of doing this, but I want to be able to see a little bit different current movement here instead of just going back up to 1.8 amps. So we're at 1.9. It should jump to like 2.6, something like that. The fans are spinning up again. And it's up to 2. Fan just puffed for a second. I can feel it, 2.1. 1.8. And so I don't know, it could be going through a whole training process where it's relearning itself. Yep, and the fans are going. And it shut off again. So if it does this again and it doesn't post, then we know that there's some other issue going on. We may end up having like some sort of BIOS issue with this one. It does almost give the symptoms of having a corrupted BIOS from like a Windows update or something like that. And the person did not give me any extra details on when this happened. It just says will not turn on. So it could have happened during a Windows update. So nothing's happening here. Let's go ahead and turn it off. Let's take some measurements. There's really not much to measure on this side of the board. We're actually going to have to pull this motherboard out most likely. But while it's in here, we'll look around under the microscope and see if we see anything obvious. All right, that's where the battery plugs in. That's the fan. The CPU is on the other side of the board right here, or the GPU. This is probably the CPU, and this is probably the GPU. All right, there is the EC chip, and we're pretty sure that's working at this point. So the BIOS, nope, that's only an 80, so it's a 1 meg chip, so that's not the BIOS chip. Here's the power management controller, 953HCH. So that's what's in charge of handling all the input MOSFETs and the charging of the battery. But we know we are getting power to the main board, so that's not going to be an issue. All right, so I don't see anything. There's not much on this side of the board. So let's go ahead and get this motherboard removed, and so we can take a closer look. All right, the motherboard is out. It's a cute little thing. It's mostly heatsink. Look at all this. All right, real quick before we proceed, since I have it out of the machine, I'm going to go ahead and plug it in, and I want to see if it's responding a little differently to the power. Sometimes after we get disconnected from all the other devices, I want to see if it reacts a little differently. So, well, now it's not powering on by itself like it was. Do we need to trigger a Hall effect sensor somewhere? Nope. All right, let's remove this heatsink so we can look what's underneath here. And we're going to have to start looking for probably the BIOS chip is kind of where I'm leaning towards on this one. We can do some measurements, but I don't think there's any short circuits on the board because it is turning on. Yeah, so I don't think there's an issue with the power circuits. I mean, there could be a short on one of the power rails, but the fact that it's just not getting a picture on the screen kind of points towards like a bad BIOS or something like that. Actually, before I pull this heatsink, let's see if we can just find the BIOS chip. It's probably underneath these stickers. I found it. Since the BIOS chip is right here and this plastic keeps trying to fold back, I'm just going to put a piece of tape here to hold it up out of the way. I think we're going to be able to access it without having to pull this heatsink off. All right, so there it is. It's a let's see, a 25R256D, what is it? JV. Let me get our chip reader out, and that's going to be a 6x8 WSON. And so I have, these are going to be a pogo pin, and it fits on a 6x8 chip, and it will line the pins up for me. So we're going to put one of those in my reader, which this is a T4800. All right, let's see if we can get this to fit on here. Which way is pin 1? So there's pin 1's the dot, and then I have a mark on mine for pin 1. I just put a black Sharpie on it, so we'll just line that up like that. And so I'm just going to hold it down in position, and then we will open our reader. Okay, here's our reader here. So I'm going to detect the chip, and if I hold it in the right position, I can get it to detect. Let's try again. Got it to detect. Okay, so it was a 25, I think it was a B, but my program only has Qs, and I know that they do work, so it's going to be this chip right here, 256JV. So we're going to select that, and let's read it. I'm going to get a good backup copy of the original in case we need to put this back on. But I'm going to be taking this original and we'll edit it and see if we can get it fixed. Okay, and then we'll verify it. Okay, it verified successfully. All right, so let's save this. Okay, so now that we have that saved, we're gonna have to get a new clean BIOS from Dell. So let's go to Dell's site real quick and download a new BIOS. So this is the X14R1. We're gonna go there and we'll go to drivers and downloads. And we'll select the driver and we're gonna select the BIOS. And we're going to, instead of just clicking download here, we actually need a different format. So the normal format's gonna be an EXE, self-extractor. We want to get this RCV version. It's gonna have a little bit more information in it that we can extract out. So I'm gonna download that. And then whenever these download, they don't name it properly. So I'm gonna copy this name so I can rename it. Okay, so it names it as a BIOS image because these are actually made for a BIOS recovery, and I've actually never gotten a BIOS recovery to work on this. So you're supposed to hold down Control and Escape and plug in the power, and it's supposed to turn on and automatically write something back. I've never got that to work. So I like to use those files and I'll edit it. So I'm going to take this RCV file here, and I have an extraction folder that I download where I extract all my BIOSes from. I'm going to put it in here, and then I have there's a BIOS extracting tool that's called, let's see, Dell PFS extract. It's on GitHub. So we're going to use that to extract it, and sometimes this doesn't work, so we have to use a different extractor. So on Alienware's, most of the time it's not going to work. It did not work. So we're going to try one of these other ones. There's another one called AMI PFAT extract, so we're going to try that one. And that one worked fine. So we got all the parts extracted into a folder now. So here's the original file, 18 megs. And now we're gonna go to the folder it created, which is this one. All right, so not all this stuff is inside the BIOS chip on a laptop like this. So this one does have an EC, and like, for instance, this EC region right here would be flashed to that EC chip separately with a programmer or whenever you're flashing it. But what we're looking for is the main. I think this is going to be it right here. So let's open it and check. What we're trying to find is the main BIOS region. And so I'm going to open that one first, and we'll go ahead and check to see if we get a match. So let's open. All right, I'm going to open the customer's original, and then I'm going to open that main wrapper. The extracted BIOS that we just extracted from the chip off the motherboard is going to be 32 megabytes. And usually 16 megs of that is actually going to be the BIOS, and then there's going to be a lot of other stuff in there. So what I want to do is I'm going to find where that region starts, and it's usually like the last half of it is it, but we're going to just use a search here. So I'm just going to copy these first two lines, and then we're going to search the extracted BIOS file and see if we can find it. So we're going to paste that in there and search. All right, so we're in there, backed up file, and if we flip back and forth between these two, you see how those headers are the same? So this area all the way to the end, or until this file is over, is going to be their main BIOS region. So we're going to copy this entire new downloaded BIOS from Dell, and then we're going to paste that in this area right here. So I'm going to paste that in there, and we're going to save as. And we're going to name this new BIOS and see if this fixes it. We still may have to do some other treatments to it, because there could still be a different region of that chip that's actually has the corrupted data on it, and then we might need to still repair it. But we're going to go ahead and just start with this. All right, so now that we have the new BIOS, we're going to write it back to the chip and see if we get the motherboard to respond a little differently. All right, so we're going to write it back. We need to attach this back on here again. All right, we got to make sure it detects. We always got to start with that. It does detect. All right, let's load that new BIOS in the buffer here. New BIOS, Alienware X14. And then we're going to program it. And this will take a little while, so we'll be right back. All right, everything was written successfully. That's good news. Let's go ahead and plug this back in and see if we get anything different. I'm interested to see if it starts powering on its own. and if it starts pulling current a little differently. We plugged it in, we got our 20 volts, but it's not turning on, which is fine because that's kind of what it did whenever we just pulled it out. So let's install it back into the system and then see if it turns on. Okay, we got the motherboard installed. Let's go ahead and plug in the power again and see if we can get this thing to post with that new BIOS on there. All right, it's pulling 1.4, 1.8 amps, 1.7, 1.9. It's moving around a little bit. Still have that one caps lock, or this one light that's on the keyboard here. I'm not really sure what's causing that. Okay, turn back off. So we're going to turn back on. It's turning back on by itself. All right. 1.8. It doesn't look like that region of the BIOS that we rewrote was the actual corrupted part of it. So we're going to have to do further BIOS modification. We'll go ahead and open it up inside the Intel image tool, and that will decompose it and break it into its pieces, and then we'll try to replace what parts are damaged. There is a chance that we won't even be able to open it in the program, and that means that it's so corrupted that we're going to need a fresh BIOS, either from a donor board, which I don't have any donor boards from this machine, a new motherboard, another test machine or something, or we can go on Badcaps and download one. They may have one on there. So let's go ahead and open the Intel image tool. All right, first we're going to need to use the ME Analyzer tool to open the BIOS and see what version. Okay, so we do have an issue here. I'm seeing the MFS, there's some sort of corrupted portion of the image, and this is the image that we extracted off the BIOS chip. So the image tool we need, it looks like, so the ME version is 16.1, so the tool is going to be 16.0, and so that's the flash tool that we need to open. So let's get that opened up. Let's try 16.0. We have it right here. We'll open 16.0. And we'll open the flash tool. All right, and so now let's drag our image on there. Okay, and we are getting an error. I see this sometimes on, if it says 16, then you can use 16.1. So let me just try 16.1 real quick. But if that doesn't work, then that means there's damage in the actual the image that we extracted off the BIOS chip was so corrupted that it's not going to be able to open it. So let's open it in 16.1. And we'll do that. Okay, we're just getting another error here, same thing, container. So the fact that we have two different errors here, we're having it with the ME Analyzer showing an error when it's trying to analyze the actual image that we extracted off of there, and then also the Intel image tool is not able to open it. It's probably too corrupted to repair the existing BIOS that we extracted off their chip. So we're going to need to get a good working version. So we'll either need a donor board, which I don't have. We'll need a new board from stock. I may have one in my warehouse. I'll have to go look. Or I can just go on Badcaps real quick and see if they have any on there. So let's do a search on Badcaps real quick. And I do see that people are posting some BIOSes on there. So let's go ahead and download one of these. Let's see if we can find one that's working. All right, so I found one on here. I've downloaded that. Let's get that opened up. Here's the Badcaps one that I just downloaded. Let's open an ME Analyzer real quick and see if we get the same results as the other one. So here's the one I downloaded. Okay, and so this is fine. The other error is not there. That's good. And then let's look at this. 16.1, same thing here, or 16.1. And it's using the flash image tool of 16.1. And here's something I noticed. So this is saying configured, which is perfect. When it's in a configured state like this, that means that it actually already has a clean ME on it. If it was, for instance, if we open the other one, this is the one that's on his, that came off of his motherboard. There's the error. But if we look at it, it's showing that it's initialized. So when it's initialized, that means that it's already been booted up on a computer, and so it's initialized to that computer. So if I took this exact image off of this one and tried to put it on another computer, it would actually give you like a 3.6 error or some sort of BIOS error, 3.5 error. But this one that we downloaded from Bad Caps is already set in the configured state. And so we should be able to just flash that straight on here. And then when it boots up, it should initialize it, and then it will be set to initialize. So if we re-extract it back off of there, it would change to initialize. Anyway, so let's go ahead and flash this one that we downloaded from Bad Caps on here and see if it fixes the issue. I will need to pull the motherboard back out real quick, so let's go ahead and do that. All right, and the motherboard is out. So now we'll need to access this chip again. And let's get our reader all lined up. All right, first I got to get it held in place. Let's detect the chip again. It's detecting, good. Let's load that new file that we got, Bad Caps. All right, we have it loaded in here. Let's program it. And this will take a second, so we'll be right back. All right, we got that program successfully. Let's go ahead and reinstall it and we'll test. All right, we got the motherboard installed. So we're gonna do moment of truth, right? We'll plug in the power. Let's watch the charger. Okay, 20 volts. 1.42, 2 amps. We went up to 2 amps. We have not hit 2 amps before. 1.9, 30, okay, well, 2.0, 0.4. Question is, will the screen come on? If this doesn't end up working, then we know that there's something else that's actually damaged on the motherboard. We don't have a lot of details. The customer just said it didn't turn on, so we don't know if they were in there changing out parts or doing something like that. And so we could have some other underlying issue that they actually damaged the board, or there's a component that went out. But right now we're going to let it go through this cycle here. It's turning off and on like it's doing a CMOS reset. So let's let it go through this cycle a little bit, because we keep hitting 2.3 amps, which I don't think it would ever hit that high before. And we're at 40 watts now, 45 watts. Okay, well, great. So that means we have some other issue. So we're gonna have to pull the board out, and let's pull the heatsink off. Let's examine and figure out if we might have a burnt component. Let's figure out if there's any shorted power rails. We did see that one power rail at 4 volts. Wait, I saw the screen. The screen. Whoa. All right. That was it. So it was just a bad corrupted BIOS, and it was so corrupted I couldn't even fix it, so we had to get a fresh one. So there you go. This laptop's now booting up just fine. Let me put the battery in, make sure it charges the battery. All right, I got their hard drive and battery installed. Let's boot it up now. Oh, great. So they have a BitLocker on here. So that means that their hard drive is encrypted with BitLocker, and the key was stored in the BIOS. And so since we rewrote that BIOS, they lost that encryption key. So I'm going to have to contact the customer, help them do the BitLocker recovery. And then once we get that key, I can input it in here, and then I can get this laptop back to them. So the big question is, why did the BIOS get corrupted? And get corrupted so bad that I couldn't even repair it, and I had to go get a different BIOS from somewhere else. And it's most likely, this has been happening a lot more lately because of Windows updates, because now Microsoft pushes out Windows updates and they push out firmware updates. And so that's probably what happened on this machine, but I'm glad I was able to get this fixed up, and now we just got to go through this BitLocker recovery and I'll get it back to my customer. I'd love to know your thoughts on this one, and thanks for watching.
I saved another laptop!